Mr. Bob Pollock is with us again once more from the Extension Service to answer your questions about lawns and gardens and plants and trees and rain and the onset of autumn, which begins tomorrow. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Enjoy
amazing. Today.
Yeah.
Because it looks like the weather's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Be cooler.
People who planted second plantings and sometimes even third plantings of their gardens, of certain items of produce, they're dealing now with much shorter days, much shorter sunlight availability for their plants. And that sort of slows the whole process down, doesn't it?
It does,
Yeah.
definitely. And as well as the cloudy weather.
Yeah.
So we did see some sun yesterday, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
But not only those shorter days on both ends, but cloudy weather even compounds that a little bit more and makes it more challenging.
So I have a beautiful volunteer tomato plant that hasn't formed tomatoes yet. It's big and tall and it's in blossom, but this particular plant, what are the odds I'm ever going to see a tomato off of it?
Well, if you protect it, you might.
Okay. It's on a tough side of the house. It doesn't get a lot of sun.
It probably is a little leggy and everything. It might be why it's taller than it normally might be.
Yeah.
Did you have to stake it?
No. I didn't. I should, but it's in rocks. I mean, it's got the river rock around it, and somehow it came up there.
There you go. Yeah. Already mulched and everything. Weed control.
There you go. It's got everything it needs, except the sunlight from this late season, and the warmth of the soil as well. It's going to start.
And
to
that's
slow
right.
down.
That helped. Yes, but we have that as well, and that also lingers on longer than the air temperatures do. It takes a lot longer for the soil to change temperatures,
especially when it's covered in
cool
river
down.
rocks.
Yeah. Well, it's already probably a little cooler under the rocks than it might be out in the soil adjacent to that. But
so I shouldn't count on filling up my salad bowl.
Although sometimes the river rock, because they're a lighter color, can absorb heat.
Yeah,
so they can
what I was
actually
thinking.
hold heat in. Now, if you'd measure the temperature underneath, because the ground's shaded all the time, it still is probably cooler than what just exposed area would be.
Okay. Well, that first killer frost is going to come too. So
yeah. Well, I just read something about out in the Corn Belt out west. They actually mentioned that word.
Frost.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that time of year. The month is soon going to turn to double figures here. 10, 11, and 12 are not my favorite months of the year, but they're inevitable.
That's
come
right.
anyway, whether I like them or not.
They're going to happen.
Yeah.
Just like these Fridays roll around, it almost seems like tomorrow and it's Friday again.
Yeah. Okay.
While we were talking about tomatoes, I did actually have a sample of tomatoes this week that definitely have late blight.
Oh yeah.
So we've been talking
County.
about it all season. You never want it to show up, but when it shows up late like this, it's not near as much of an issue as if it had been a month ago.
Yeah. North, south, east, or west?
East of here, like Brush Valley Township area.
Okay. All right. So folks aware of that, and if they're wanting to say they could spray that antifungal spray on them now.
To prevent it,
To prevent, I mean,
if you're
those
going to
that aren't affected,
right?
You're not
if you're going to have, if you're planning to have tomatoes and continue on, if you're at the point where you're doing a lot of harvesting now, and have most of the crop in, not a lot of reason to do it. But if the crop's going to continue, then just keep an eye on it. Yep.
All right. A lot of rain these last couple of weeks. And still, it hasn't rained for 3 or 4 days. You step on my lawn, it's like a sponge. You get that squishy sound.
And the humidity as well.
Yeah.
Is just staying up there and compounds all of that. It's hard for things to dry out.
So you're looking at the chart there. What's on that chart?
Yeah, I was just looking at the weekly weather summary. But as of Sunday, the first day of this week, we were 13.63 inches above normal
for the year.
And that's for the growing season from April till now.
For the growing season only.
Yeah, so that doesn't include January, February, March in there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So somebody said last night we were at the REA meeting, and the guy said, well, fall starts in a couple of days. He said, How's your summer been? Kind of wet, huh? Yeah, it's been kind of wet.
It has been.
Yeah, it's an unusual type year, and the grass is continuing to just go to town. I mean,
it is. It is, and this is a time of year where we try to, a lot of times, clean things up as well as get things established. So if you need to repair the lawn, there's been a lot more foliar leaf diseases on everything, for the most part, including the lawn. People with patchy areas that have died out, and just because of the disease pressure we've had this year, that's been much more prevalent to have, there's a spot here and a spot there, and they've kind of melted out. In a lot of cases, once that happens, a lot of those fungal diseases will kill off that patch of grass or area, and you just have to reseed. And it's not going to, you just got to reseed. Yeah. And then hopefully, and one of the things you get into is picking the right species of grass to put in there. And again, most of what we want to plant are mixtures of grass. We don't want to plant just one cultivar of, say, Kentucky bluegrass. We don't want to do that because it increases your risk of having something go wrong, either an insect or a disease that can attack that specific plant. So we usually plant these mixtures of, and if you read the label, which is required on there of what's in that bag, Kentucky bluegrass and perennial ryegrass and maybe a little bit of annual ryegrass, and the other species help us reduce our risk, because one thing might get attacked, but the perennial ryegrass may not.
Yeah.
So you still have a lawn there to work with.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this because you see more and more evidence on our roadways of this, of trees that have fallen. The ash trees have just been destroyed. And we're getting toward the winter season when the weather will get very harsh, and when some of those trees that have been absolutely decimated are going to get a heavy snow on them. How important is it for us to walk around the edges of our properties and assess those trees and see if they're within danger of falling on somebody or something?
Yeah. Pretty important, actually.
I would guess.
Because you don't have to look hard to find those trees around.
Yeah.
And a lot
of times... Now's the time, because the others all have their leaves on them. So now you can see them very easily.
You can see them very easily. It's a little hard to predict when a branch may fall. Just the right windstorm can do it, but it may take snow load. It may look like it's fine, but it's still dead, and it's going to continue to decay. And the organisms, the fungi, the bacteria, all that break all that dead wood down, they're working 24/7. And so eventually that's going to just continue to get weaker, and the risk of a limb or the whole thing coming down just keeps increasing the longer that stands there.
They don't have bark on them at all.
No.
There's no bark on them.
Bark peels off, and then it just keeps going from there. Yeah. So anything that could land on property of any value,
including your own head.
Those, and even more so human. If humans can be involved, if a tree's on your property, it's going to fall on the road. Not good, because that can fall down on a pedestrian or somebody driving or multiple people driving.
Well, I mentioned REA last night. That's a big part of what they're doing. What Pollock is doing is these things are going to fall on their lines, and there goes
interrupt
the
power
supply.
And that's their main goal: keep the power flowing. And so they're having to deal with that, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice but to respond to it now. That's just we have to clean up the best we can. And as we can. So kind of prioritize if you have a tree or trees like that. If they're going to fall and not hit anything, okay. And you want to just let it go, fine. But if there's a chance that adults or kids or damage to property can occur, the costs are going to be a lot greater than hiring somebody to take that tree down. You also need to be very careful. If you're not trained, I've got a chainsaw, I can cut this tree down. Well, there's a lot of bad things that can happen if you don't know what you're doing, especially with a dead tree.
Yeah, with a dead one, it's
because just that vibration can sometimes be enough to knock a limb down as you're going through that process. So,
and a tree usually tells you what way it wants to fall.
Yeah.
But usually, not all the time, and it might surprise you. You have to watch around power lines, too. You don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, and that even increases the risk of something bad happening. So usually when we start to get into power lines and the potential for that, that's when you want to really consider hiring somebody that's trained to do that and can do it safely for everybody involved.
Yeah, okay. A couple of moments left with Bob Pollock this morning. Farmers are thinking about getting their corn, their soybeans off. Soybeans started to change in our neighborhood this week. And boy, they go quickly, don't they?
They do.
They go from lush green to spindly to yellow. And
silage corn has been coming off already. And
yeah, has it already?
Yeah. Yeah, in spot, selective. Well, I've seen some of it up north there.
Okay.
So it's started.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of green in a lot of it, but some of the early varieties are starting to mature down.
Farmers are going to be on the road with their tractors, and obviously we want folks to be safe around them too.
Equipment will be running, and none of that runs fast.
Yeah.
So
corn crop good this year?
Be patient. I think it's going to be pretty good.
Field corn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In most cases.
That's good. And our county has a really big soybean industry now that maybe wasn't as big as it was 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
Or is bigger than it was 5 years ago.
Yes.
Farmers are really getting onto the soybeans.
They are.
All right. Very good. Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160, 101.1 FM. Fox News is coming up next at the top of the hour. We follow that with news from our newsroom with Josh Whittison, Jack Benedict with sports. Browns win. Jack's happy. Jack's very happy.